The time is now 6 p.m. Our regular City Council meeting for January 4th, 2022 is now in session. Councilmember Scott will lead us with the opening prayer and the pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. Please rise.
Shall we bow our heads? Dearest Heavenly Father, we thank you. Thank you for this new year with its boundless opportunities and just the richness and the privilege of spending another year on this earth. Thank you for our lives. Each day is a blessing, and never, ever let us take our lives for granted. Thank you for our families. Each member is important to the family unit, and we thank you for the rich blessings of our families. Thank you for our community. Thank you that we get to live in such a wonderful, loving community as Schertz. And please continue to bless us with your bounty. Bless each family represented here today and the ones who couldn't be with us, and protect us from evil. Bless our leaders and provide your heavenly wisdom so the best decisions will be made for everyone, current and future residents of this great place. Thank you for the businesses that provide jobs for us and our families. Jobs mean safety and security, and thank you for the privilege of work as we participate in this great enterprise called the American Dream. Thank you for our homes. Thank you that we have homes to live in and a roof over our heads. Dearest Heavenly Father, thank you for providing all of our needs, our food, our clothing, and our shelter. Please be with those who are not fortunate enough to have homes, and let us always remember to count our blessings and have compassion on those not as fortunate. We ask your protection, dear Father. We know that every minute of every day, our lives are in your hands, and we pray for our first responders as they take great personal risk each time they go out on a call. While others are rushing away from danger, they are rushing toward it to safeguard our community. Please place a special blessing around them and their families, and send your heavenly angels to protect them. Bless Schertz and protect us, and keep evil away from our community. Place a hedge around us that the forces of malevolence and violence have no foothold and cannot enter this place. We pray for protection for our families, and please keep our families safe from harm and danger every day. And we pray a special blessing on the children of our community. And dear Lord, please, we ask your protection for our nation. Please protect our nation from enemies both within and outside of our borders. Finally, we ask for wisdom and guidance. Please be with us in this meeting tonight and throughout this new year, and give us your spirit of discernment so we can make the best decisions that are aligned with your will, as we know that all good gifts come down from the Father. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Let us be wise in our decisions, and guide us as we conduct the business at hand. In Jesus' name and for his sake, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Councilmember Scott. Okay, first we have employee introductions. However, we postponed the new employee recognitions and we'll reschedule for a later date sometime in February. So we'll move on to presentations. We have a one presentation, our citizen satisfactory survey conducted by, and we have actually two of them, police best practices. First is the citizen satisfactory survey. Ms. Klepper?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we were going to have Jason Murado with the ETC Institute here to present to you guys, but due to some travel issues, we're going to have Jason joining us virtually. So he's going to go through our 2021 Community Satisfaction Survey, and I will click along through the slides for him.
Great, thanks, Linda. My name is Jason Murado. I'm with ETC Institute. As Linda mentioned, my plan was to be there in person to give this presentation, but my flight was canceled this morning. So instead of being in nice, warm, sunny Texas, I'm in cold, icy Kansas, going through the results. Slides here. So I work for ETC Institute. We are a market research firm that's based in the Kansas City area. And the thing we specialize in is conducting community surveys for local governments. And this past fall, for the third time, we conducted a community survey for the city of Schertz. So today I'm going to go through the high-level findings. The full report is very detailed and comprehensive. So today I'm going to go through key findings from the survey. I just have one quick slide about ETC Institute. We're based in the Kansas City area, but we're a national leader in providing market research for local governments. We've been doing this type of work for over 35 years, so this is really the type of work that we specialize in. This next slide shows a quick rundown of what I'll go through today. I'll go over the purpose and methodology of the survey. What I call the bottom line up front are our main conclusions from the survey, and then I'll go through the major survey findings as how we came to those conclusions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as well. So there are several reasons to conduct a survey like this. One is to get an objective assessment of how satisfied residents are with major city services, and then also to help determine what residents feel are the top priorities for the community. We're also able to measure trends from the previous surveys. We conducted this survey also in 2016 and 2019, and each time we tweak questions a little bit, but most of the questions have been the same each time so that we can measure their performance over time. And then we're also able to compare your results with other communities across the country. So just a little bit about the survey. The survey was 7 pages length, which is acceptable length for one of our community surveys. The survey was administered by a combination of mail and online to random selected residents throughout the city, and that's standard methodology for surveys. Our goal was to receive at least 400 completed surveys, and we had a good response. We actually ended up with 436. And the results of the 436 surveys, 95% level of confidence has a margin of error, plus or minus 4.6%. So essentially that means that if we conducted this survey the same 100 times, plus or minus 4.7% what we're reporting. So the results aren't perfect, but really there is a really small margin of error. Here we have a map of the city. The red dots are households completing the survey, so we had a good distribution throughout the city. And this is very similar to what we had in previous surveys. And we also made sure we had a good representation of key demographic areas such as age, race, ethnicity, and gender. So here are our main conclusions for the survey. We found that residents have a very positive perception of the city, and a couple of examples of that 90% of respondents were satisfied with the overall quality of city services, and then 89% were satisfied with the overall quality of life of the city. And those numbers are much higher than other cities where we conduct these surveys. We also found that it's moving in the right direction. And the reason we say that is that the satisfaction ratings have increased in 61 out of 9 areas since the last survey in 2019. And 33 of those areas have had a significant increase in satisfaction. And by significant, we mean an increase of 5% or more. And there were no significant decreases on the survey at all. To me, this is one of the biggest highlights for a couple of reasons. One is that the ratings were extremely high in 2018, so it's really impressive that they've actually improved in almost all of the areas that we included on the survey. The other thing why this really stands out is that last 2 months, most people after these surveys had a decrease. So this is really kind of against what we've seen. We see so many increases compared to your most recent survey. Also found that satisfaction was much higher in Schertz than it is in other cities. That's consistent with found on other surveys as well we conducted for you. Schertz rated the U.S. average in 41 out of 45 areas, and there's a couple areas especially out. One is the satisfaction with the overall quality of city services is 31% above the U.S. average. And that's one of the most important questions on the survey, because they were asking residents to take into account all the cities provide, and really give an overall satisfaction rating for how well we do. And then another area that really stood out is when it comes to satisfaction customer service from city employees, rated 20% above satisfaction. And then we found the top overall priorities are traffic, traffic growth, road repair, maintenance and expansion, and then enforcing code. And those were also the top priorities on the survey. So we found that residents have a very positive perception of the city. For this chart, the dark blue are residents who are very satisfied, light satisfied. The gray is neutral. And for these charts, we meeting expectations, so rating a 3 5-point scale. And the pink are those who are dissatisfied. So obviously, the positive rates far outweigh the negative. This is for general perceptions that residents have of the city. If you look at the top of the chart, 90% of residents are satisfied with the overall quality of services compared to 1% who are dissatisfied. And that's one of the best rates for this question, which is one of the most important for the survey, to have 90% satisfied compared to 1% dissatisfied. Really amazing. And then if you look at the second row down, about 90% of residents are satisfied with the overall quality of life, and Schertz, only 2% are dissatisfied. This was the very first question on the survey, and here we asked residents to major categories of services. In this question, we're asking residents to rate areas big picture at the departmental level. And later on in the survey, we asked about some more specific areas within some of the categories. So again, a lot more blue than pink, which means the positive ratings far outweigh the negative. What stood out to me here is how few people were satisfied just across the board with all of these services. For every single one, less than 15% were dissatisfied. And in fact, or other than codes, but 7% less than, which is very, very unusual. Usually even cities that have very high ratings have at least a couple of categories that have 20, 25, or even 30% of residents who are dissatisfied. The lowest rated area is enforcing codes and ordinances. And even for that, you have over 60% satisfied compared to only 14% dissatisfied. If you look at the top of this chart, you can see the highest rated areas, higher services, services, library, trash recycling, yard waste, and police. And then we also found that residents feel safe in Schertz. You can see very few residents feel unsafe in any of these situations, even in their neighborhood at night. Almost 90% of residents feel safe compared to only 2% who feel unsafe. If you look at the second row down, the overall feeling of safety in the city, 94% of residents feel safe, only 1% unsafe. Here again, we have a map of the city, and here is both the results out by census. So these are very small areas, and what this does is it tells us if residents in different parts of the city are rating services differently, or have different perceptions of the city. This chart is for overall quality of city services, and you can see the entire map is blue. In fact, some areas are in blue, which is the highest top 4 rating. So this tells us that all parts of the city are satisfied with overall quality of city services. Sometimes what happens is, even if the satisfaction ratings are very high overall, once you start breaking it into these small geographic areas, you usually see some areas where residents are not as satisfied, like they're not getting as good of a level of service as people in parts of the city. But you can see that's not the case at all, as the entire map is blue. This map is for the overall quality of life in the city, and the entire map is blue. In fact, good portions of it are dark blue, just the highest possible. So I mentioned earlier that the city's moving in the right direction. And again, for me, this is one of the biggest highlights. So, satisfaction rates increased 61 out of 69 areas in 2019. It stayed the same in 3 areas, only increased in 5 areas. And then what also really stands out is that in 32 of those areas, there was a significant increase in satisfaction, so 5% or more. And there were no areas at all with significant decreases. We'll just go through a few examples of this. This chart is for major categories of services. The dark blue are the satisfaction ratings for this year's survey. The gray are the 2015, and the pink are the ratings for the first year survey about 2016. So satisfaction has increased 11 out of 14 areas. 3 areas that decreased, not significant. They were just 1 or 2 or 3%. The areas with the blue arrows had a significant increase in satisfaction. So that includes fire services, emergency medical, trash recycling and yard waste, police services, city water and sewer services, animal service, and municipal court services. For perceptions of the city, all 8 areas had an increase of at least 3% or more. The 4 areas that had significant increase in the appearance of the city, appearance of commercial properties, the overall value residents receiving tax dollars and fees, that had gone down a little bit, 16 to 2019, but now it's increased 7% from the survey. It's one of the biggest increases in the survey. Then the overall quality of developments has increased by 6%. If you look at this top row, the overall quality of service provided by the city, that's one of the most important questions on the survey. And you can see it's gotten a little better each time we've done the survey. In 2016, the satisfaction rating was 84%, which is a very, very high number, much higher than most other cities, but it's actually gotten better each time we survey. Here we at, and this shows satisfaction for residents, interaction with city employees. All 5 areas that had increased in satisfaction, and was significant increases how well it was treated by city employees, and also how quickly staff responded to those requests. Each of those had a 6% increase from the last survey. Then for code enforcement, all 4 areas had an increase in satisfaction. The 2 that had significant increase were graffiti regulations and enforcing sign regulations. And then for communication, 8 out of the 9 areas had an increase in satisfaction. There were 5 areas that increased significantly, which includes the city's social media, each one is information on the website, the availability of information, city operations, the biweekly electronic newsletters increased by 6%, and the level of fiscal transparency. You can see that's got a little better this time we survey. And then for solid waste and utility services, this is the area that had some of the biggest increases in satisfaction. There are increases in all 6 areas, but significant increases in water services, sewer, utility billing, and then bulky item pickup and removal services. Each one of those areas had an increase of either 8% or more. So really significant increases compared to where they were just a couple of years ago. So we also found that satisfaction with city services is much higher in Schertz than in other communities. This was not a surprise because this was seen on your previous surveys. Rated above the US average and 41 out of the 45 areas that we compared, and rated significantly higher, 38 of those. Then comparing your results to the Texas average, they were above 40 out of 45 areas, and significantly areas. So for these next few charts, the blue line are the satisfaction rates for the city of Schertz, the red are the satisfaction ratings from residents of the state of Texas, and the gray are the ratings from all across the U.S. So for major categories of services, all 12 areas rate significantly higher than both the regional and national average. One area that is especially stands out is customer service for city employees, which is about halfway down the list. You had a 79% satisfaction rating, which is more than double the Texas average and almost 30% above the national average. For perceptions of the city, all 4 areas rates are significantly higher. If you look at the top row, 90% of residents were satisfied with the overall quality of city services, more than double the Texas percent, over 30% above the national average. Then another area that really stands out here is this bottom row. Overall value received for city taxes and fees. You have a 63% satisfaction rate. It always seems low compared to some of the other areas on the survey, but you can see the Texas average is below 30%, national is only 4%. So for this question, 63% satisfaction rating is actually a really, really good. For feeling of safety, in all 4 areas, your ratings are significantly higher than other communities. So Schertz residents are much safer residents in their city. For public works, rates significantly higher in cleanliness of streets, mowing and trimming along streets and sidewalks. One area that does rate below other communities is street lighting, but there has been a 6% street lighting compared to the last survey. So it's still below other communities, but definitely has improved since the last survey. For parks and recreation, 5 out of 6 areas, ratings are much higher than other communities. Walking and biking trails is one of the areas that is still below other communities. But just like street lighting, it's had a 6% increase since 2019. So still rating below the communities, but definitely has improved since the last survey. Now we'll take a look at top priorities. We asked residents what they feel are the biggest issues that church face within the next 5 years. And these are the same top 3 that we've seen on the other surveys. Traffic by far is number 1. Almost 80% of residents like that's the biggest issue over the next 5 years. The other top issues are planning growth and then road repair and maintenance. Here we have something that we call the important satisfaction rating. And this is a tool that we use to help set priorities. And this analysis is based on 2 different types of data. First, we ask residents how satisfied they are with services. And then as a follow-up question, we ask which services residents feel should receive most emphasis from city leaders over the next years. So the idea behind this is that those areas that have a combination of low satisfaction ratings, but at the same time with what residents feel the most important, should be the highest priority to focus on. So making improvements in those areas impact the greatest number of residents. This first chart major categories of services, and the one area that's a high priority is enforcing codes of justice. The second and third highest priorities are management of stormwater runoff and then parks and recreation, but those are just in the medium priority. For public works, here we kind of broke 3 tiers. The highest priority are maintaining major streets and then maintenance of major TxDOT roadways, area that residents felt was high priority. Areas in yellow are also high priority, the tier top 2. And that includes maintaining neighborhood streets, street lighting, and then availability of bike lanes. For parks and recreation, again, we kind of broke this 3 tiers. The highest priority is the biking trails. That was all high priority in the last survey. The next level of high level are the availability of people recreation programs. And then for course codes, there are only 4 categories that were rated, but the 2 that really stood out is far higher priorities than the other 2 are forcing free and forcing them to So we have just a few other ones to look at. This was a new question that we had to the survey this year. We asked how residents trust the city of police officers by thing. 85% of respondents say they do trust police officers the right thing. In fact, 61% strongly agree that they trust officers. They disagree with us. We asked residents where they would most prefer to get information about the city. You can see there's 2 sources of information that really stand out. The Schertz magazine website. It's also consistent on previous surveys. So we had a question to ask residents if they contacted the city within the past year. Half survey respondents have contacted the city last year. And as a follow-up, we asked, how would you describe the service received contacted the city? So we've asked this question in surveys. Each time the results are very positive, but this is the best event. 46% of respondents rated their service as excellent, which you can see is much higher than previous years, and only 6% rated their level of service as poor, which you can see is the lowest that it's been, more than twice as low as the last survey. We asked residents about the level of service, if it's meeting their expectations. So on this chart, the gray bar means that residents are satisfied with the level of service for these categories. For most categories, that's the top choice, is that residents are satisfied with the different level of service. The one exception to that is maintaining streets and sidewalks. About 3/4 of residents feel like the level of service should be at least a little higher, if not much. And then we asked residents what are their main reasons for choosing to live in the city. Top reasons: location, people feel it's a safe community, and then just the overall quality of life. But just a quick recap, you saw that residents have a very positive perception of the city. A lot of examples of that. The city's moving in a direction. Even though the results were really, really good in 2019, they've actually improved in most areas since then. Really, it's amazing. Once again, your rates are much higher than other communities, most areas. A couple of the real key areas are services and customer service by city employees. And then the top overall priorities are traffic, planning growth, road repair maintenance, and enforcement roads and ordinances. So that is everything that I had. Obviously, the results are extremely positive once again. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, has any.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. Your voice was a little scratchy, but we were able to follow along with the screen here. Council, questions? Councilmember Hayward.
How many of the surveys were mailed out total?
The surveys were mailed to about 3,000 residents. And the reason for that is our typical response rate is about 12 to 15%.
And then,
So we had a good response. We had a little more than 400 complete surveys.
okay, the other question I have is, I guess, is there a way for you to determine how many mailed them back in and how many went online?
Yeah, I don't have that number offhand, but I can certainly tell you how many completed by mail online. We do have that information.
Okay, because I was looking at it and having one of the surveys and the letter that went out, I guess my question is, like, if someone's doing it online and then you ask your neighbor, hey, did you get the survey? And the neighbor says no, and then they decide, oh, here's the website. If someone that didn't get the survey mailed to them, but they went online and did the survey, I'm just wondering, would that skew it? And if someone's doing it online, like giving them like an access code so you know who, I mean, like it was one that was mailed and no one shared that email, that website with their neighbor.
You cut out a little bit, but I think what you're asking is if someone filled out the survey or randomly selected to fill out the survey, like if they shared the link with the neighbor.
Yeah.
What we do is mailed survey has an address put on it, and when people go online to fill out a survey, we ask them to provide the home address.
Okay.
So that's how we make sure that people who fill out the survey were only those who randomly select. That way it can't be skewed by sharing the link with neighbors or your family or just anybody else.
Okay. If I may, I have a couple more. Unless I'm, okay. The questions, I guess, the questions that were asked, who created the questions? Was it staff or was it the company that we hired?
Jason, I'll take this question. So the company provides surveys that other cities do, Round Rock, Dallas, San Antonio, and so we asked for a sampling in 2016, and we used those surveys to create our first one, and it was management that decided which questions were important and which services we wanted to make sure we included, because obviously every city has different services. And so then over the years, every year when we send it out, management comes back to the table, reevaluates those questions, changes things, adds things,
Okay, 'cause
depending
as
on
a
the-
suggestion, because to me, if I'm sending a survey out, I really don't want I don't know answers, because then they have to be taken out to get the statistical data. So to me, if we're asking them where there's not an I don't know, then it might be get a better statistical data, I would think, a number. Because like when I was looking at like Parks and Recs, if I don't use Parks and Recs, I'm going to answer I don't know because I don't use them. So I'm thinking like a question could be put in there, do you use city parks and recs programs? Then if yes, then you finish. If not, you don't, because if I don't finish them, all my questions are going to be, I don't know. And I'm just wondering, is there a way to ask questions to get more specific data that we can use, since we're looking at this, to figure out where our assets need to be or where we need to focus more on in different communities?
Sure, no, understand that, and kind of to go back to what Linda was saying, ETC, the survey itself, we probably use 90% of what other communities use for the questions. So only, I would say, maybe 10% were custom questions, if you will. And so then Jason can probably speak a little bit more to the I don't know, because that's the way that the methodology is used to calculate that. So I don't know, Jason, if you can hear, but if you could speak to that maybe.
Yeah, sure. The reason we asked, this is how the questions are asked on most of the communities, so that's the easiest way to make these comparisons. And for those results that I went through, we exclude the don't know. So the results are just based on those residents that have an opinion. In most cases, a small percentage of residents select don't know. Things like streets, police services, people have an opinion. Other services, there might be more don't knows, like if asking about children's programs, like that. We have before done what you suggested, where we say, have you used this, yes or no? If you say yes, then they answer the question. So we could do it that way, but then it would be a little trickier comparing it to other communities, because most of the times it's set up in this way.
Because for me, when I was, excuse me, looking at the survey questions, because I wasn't randomly picked, but I ended up being able to get a copy of it. And when I looked at it, I'm like, if I don't use the parks, or if I have an HOA park, I'm not going to use a city park. The other thing I looked at is, I know with code, if you live in a neighborhood with HOA, typically they're going to be the ones that's going to kind of do a little bit of that code enforcement. So to me, that can also skew the code enforcement data, because you've got some of these HOAs that do it, and I get that. And then when I was looking at private property, is private property being, you know, my house, or is people looking at private property being a lot that's not, you know, a lot that's up for sale, that's not, you know, so could that, you know, if we narrow down the scope of what that private property means, I think gives us a better idea of whether people thinking that code enforcement is enforcing code on private property. Because some people I talked to were thinking not necessarily the house or the houses, they were thinking more like vacant lots. So I'm just, you know, looking at ways of maybe possibly improving to get what we want, because if we're using this to do things as to improve them, then maybe if we're drilling down on questions to improve that and be more specific in the area of Schertz, instead of always being general and using what other cities use, we can be specific to what we need, because some things that New Braunfels does, we don't do, or Live Oak, we don't do, and maybe being a little more specific to those questions is just my only concern.
Right, and so again, some of the more tailored questions for this survey focused on more of the emergency preparedness, because that is something, as we're looking at that area of, you know, things where we can expand on and things we can educate the community on. So we were able to make some custom questions like that, but that is something true, like as we meet to do the next one, we can certainly, if there's certain areas we may want to have a little bit more custom answer to. But I think the intent of having about 90% of the questions be the same is so you can compare it to other communities across Texas and the country as well. But yes, we can certainly look into that.
Okay, and then is it the question about, do we trust the police, is that added because of the climate that is going on now, or?
So I believe there was, when we started looking at the surveys and we had reached out to Jason and asked him, you know, as we're looking, is there any additional questions that have been asked by other communities? And so that, and what was the other topic? There's just the pandemic, COVID pandemic response. And so we made the decision to ask that question.
Councilmember Scott?
Yes, thank you. This was really informative. It was interesting. It was comprehensive. It was quite an ambitious effort. I think you did a very good job. On how many respondents again were there? 460 something?
436.
436. Okay, I had 463. I'm a little dyslexic. So 436. My comment to you would be, I'd like to see a page with the demographics broken out, where you have the actual number of Schertz residents by age group, and then have the number of respondents by age group, so you can, I take your word on it, but I would really like to see that. Additionally, the same type of bar graph side by side with the ethnicity of the Schertz residents and the ethnicity of the respondents. And finally, last but not least, location. If you go to page, I don't know if it was 14 or 15, but it was like the light blue and the dark blue. One's extremely satisfied, one's, happy or good with it, but that's quite a difference. It's like somebody drew a line right in the middle of Schertz. Real dark in the more populated area, lighter blue down toward the other. I'd like to see it by location as well. I think that would be valuable in analyzing the data. Comment, I'm just putting that out there for next year. I don't expect you to go back and do that at this time, but I think that'd be valuable.
So there will be maps available. There's a maps appendix that gives you a look at various questions and the locations of where the satisfaction is and where they were answering them. I believe that was included in your council packet, but it might not have been the map appendix, because I think I just got that one, or am I still waiting on it, Jason?
Yeah, the maps were included as a separate appendix to the main report. Similar to those maps, a couple of those maps I showed the presentation. We created a map like that. Every question asked in a 5-point scale. There's about 100 maps, I think maybe even a little more, where we show the results if they're different in different parts of the city.
Yeah, I'm going more toward the actual bar graph with the demographics, but that's fine. I was very happy with the results. I'm a little scattered, so y'all got to bear with me. The overall quality of city services, 31% above the U.S. average. Satisfaction with customer service, 28% above the national average. This was a very intuitive study, because my question was, what is it compared to Texas? And then y'all went there and y'all showed those statistics too. There were some nice surprises in here and some other ones as well, but I don't want to go into all of it. My question for you is another question. Okay, now I'm going to back up. I'm going to have to, because I put my foot in it. The safety, I was surprised that it was higher in some Texas cities compared to Texas, but Schertz surpassed them all. It eclipsed them all, so that was fine. The biking and the walking trails being lower than Texas in the U.S. surprised me, and not in a good way. However, room for improvement, right? In conclusion, I do know what Councilwoman Hayward was getting at, because she goes to the very question of universe estimates, but I think you answered with your uniformity, so you can compare these years to 2016, 2018, and then currently. One of my questions was, is 2016 your baseline? But then when I'm reading the bottom of it, it looked like 2019 was, right? What's your baseline on the growth for those?
The first year we conducted the survey was 2016.
Right.
So most questions were asked all 3 years, but there were some that were added in 2019. So for some selected questions, 2019 was the baseline year.
Okay, that answered my question.
But for most.
Sorry, what? Okay, got it, 216. And that was on page 18. That was my question. Was 2016 your baseline, or was it year to year? So you just answered that. Finally, 2 more points and I'll let it go. Again, good job. Whenever you're talking about code enforcement being problematic, what was the wording? Because whenever I'm listening to that, I'm like, well, what about code enforcement? They're not enforcing it enough? Because like my neighbor's trash is piling up and nobody's been here? Or is it like they're too strict because they come down like a hammer with any little thing? Like, that's open to a lot of room for interpretation on the code enforcement. I mean, unless that went right by me, because that could go either way. And then hold that thought, and along those lines, I know I'm asking you 2 questions, but last but not least, with the things that we need to work on, code enforcement was one, but I don't know that that's the right logic. I don't know that that is the highest priority because of the wording of that. You know, the bikes and the walking trails might be the one. I don't know, I'm just saying. So what are your thoughts on the code enforcement question?
So the code enforcement question, it's one of your lowest rated areas, but it's not unusual. Compared to other communities, the still rate's pretty good. Like code enforcement always rates lower compared to fire services or a lot of areas of parks and recreation. So your ratings are definitely not bad in code enforcement. And in fact, they've increased in every area since 2019. Now, the areas that are rated the lowest for enforcement of mowing of weeds and grass, enforcing cleanup of junk and debris. Even for those, you had a lot more positive than negative. Those were the two areas that are rated the lowest. Now, we could get more specific next time and ask about breaking out between residential property versus commercial property. We could do something like that. We do have the maps that show if the results are different parts of the city, so you kind of pinpoint which areas residents are the most and least satisfied with. So I think that would be helpful as well. The thing we have to keep in mind is we can get more specific on a lot of these questions, but we have to make sure that the survey doesn't get too long or it'll get more difficult for people to fill out. The survey is pretty much at maximum length now, so if we wanted to add it to the next survey, we probably want to take something else out, shorten the question. So that's always kind of the thinking balance. We want to get as much information as possible, but we also want to get a reasonable length so that people will fill out the survey.
Okay, that was a fair answer. Thank you. I would just recommend in the future to put like what's good about it or what's bad about it, just so we can interpret that data. But the overall, I was pretty happy with this survey. It was excellent.
Mayor Pro Tem Dalla?
First, I just want to say thank you to staff and management. I know you guys work hard every day. I think this is a good point in time of where we are, and certainly it deserves some recognition and celebration. But one of the things that continues to move us forward is what I would call a relentless dissatisfaction with the status quo, and I would encourage y'all to keep looking for ways to improve and continue to get better. Thank you.
Council, any other comments? I just want to go ahead and echo on what Mayor Pro Tem Dalla said. This is a reflection on the hard work our city staff has done. And those numbers are just so impressive. Appreciate it so much, all the hard work that you all do. Thank you.
Mayor, can I, Jason, in terms of the demographics, do you, in the data that we report, is there more detail in terms of the demographics, the makeup of the sample size?
Yeah, there is. The full report has charts and graphics show the breakdown for demographic questions like age, race, ethnicity, gender. Those are all, I didn't show them in the presentation, but they are all in the full report. The charts and graphs section kind of tabular data. So we do have that.
Okay, we're going to post the report.
Yes, the report is going to be posted tomorrow morning on the website. So the report and then any appendixes that go with it.
Okay.
Other comments? Yes, Councilmember Scott.
I'm so proud I live in Schertz. I have people that I work with that say, God, I wish I could live in Schertz. You're so lucky, and I'm just so humbled because sometimes we take it for granted. It's like being married to a beautiful woman or a handsome man, and you just get used to it, and then someone else comes along, and they're like, dang, and you're like, wow. So, man, way to go, y'all. Good job.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you,
Great.
Linda.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we'll continue with our police best practices presentation. Chief Bain.
I'll get it to go here. There we go. All right. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Dr. Brown. I want to take a minute to give you all an update on our best practices program. We've completed all policies. Last time I was here, we were roughly about 60% through. We've completed all policies out of our archive policy book, updated any policies that were currently in our software program, and created a few policies that just simply did not exist. We're currently reconciling all those policies against best practices standards. They have a list of about 170 standards, so we're making sure that we've met all those. Here, January 10th, this next Monday, we start an audit on our property room, which is a huge part of this best practices program, and really a big part of the department, because that is where all our evidence, the gun, the money, the dope, and everything is stored. So we're going to bring in a private contractor, go through that evidence locker piece by piece, touch everything in there, and start fresh. Part of the program, we need to name a best practices manager, and that's Sergeant Scott Morehouse. He has been a huge help in this process, because every policy that we went through, he would come back and write a test for it. So as each policy went to our software program and got sent out to staff, not only did they have to read it and acknowledge it, but then they were tested on it. And so we could gauge the staff on their understanding of the policy, and if there was a need to go back and maybe make some adjustments or provide additional training. With the program, myself and the program manager have to attend specific trainings, so we have both done that through the Texas Chiefs program. And with that, we've also brought in a training corporal. We've created a new position. So outside of all our TCOL mandated training that we're required to do by the state, there is training that's part of this program that we have to fulfill. And it's training on the policies and procedures that we put out. There's statistics and other readiness programs that we have to put in place. So that training corporal will work with the program manager, implementing these training programs and the stats that we need to maintain. So like talked about previously, everything's in Power DMS now. That is our software program that tracks all of our policies with the test attached. We've also gone back and reconciled Power DMS. We want to make sure that there was no duplicates, that there was any old policies in there, and just make sure that everything was up to date. And we have set every single policy in there on a 2-year review. Some of them are on a 1-year. But what it does is it reminds us, say, okay, it's time, so nothing gets forgotten or missed as we move forward. We have a couple of house cleaning items that we'll be bringing back to council here in the near future, and I look to apply actually for the best practices recognition program within the next 60 to 90 days. Questions?
Thank you, Chief Payne. All right, council, floor is open for discussion. No questions. Hey, thank you.
All right, thank y'all.
Chief, how long after you apply does the process generally?
So once we apply, each policy that we have, there is a submission form. And so with the submission form, not only do you attach the policy, you have to provide the supporting documentation. So we'll provide the printouts of every officer acknowledging the policy. I'll give you an example, the organizational chart, just a basic one. We have the submission form, copy of the chart, a picture of the chart where it hangs, and a document stating that everybody's recognized that. So each policy will have 4 to 5 supporting documents submitted. So that'll be about a 500 to 600 page submission. So it's probably going to take a few months to get through all the submissions. And once we get to the submissions in, the Texas Chiefs will actually come in and do a on-site visit. And they'll look at the facility, they'll visit with staff, they'll look at our evidence locker, our weapons armory, and really just do an overview of the entire department along with our policies. So fortunately, as we continue to submit policies, they'll review it as they go. And just depending how fast we can get them in and how fast they can review them.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Good job, Chief.
Thank you.
All the hard work on that.
Okay, we'll move on to city events and announcements. Announcements of upcoming events. Mr. Kelm or Ms. Gonzalez?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so this coming Saturday, January 8th, is going to be the Polar Bear Plunge, and this is a co-sponsored event with the Schertz Family YMCA. It will be from 10 a.m. to noon at Pickerel Park Pool. There's a $15, fee to attend. You can register online or in person at the Schertz Family YMCA. On Thursday, January 13th, Northeast Partnership meeting at Olympia Hills and Golf and Conference Center, RSVP to the City Secretary office if you plan on attending. And then we'll be back here next Tuesday, January 11th for a regularly scheduled City Council meeting at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, announcements and recognitions by our city manager, Dr. Brown.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the Parks Department for the great job on the concert the other night. Sounds like it really went well, and we just appreciate all their work on this new event. Look forward to having it in the future.
Announcements and recognitions by the mayor. I also like to express my gratitude for Parks and Recreations for working on that day. It was a great event, seeing that it was the first time we held a New Year's celebration. Thank you to the staff. All right, we'll move on to the hearing of residents. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the City Council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and before addressing the council, for the record, please state your name and address. Mayor Pro Tem Dalla, please call our first speaker.
First up this evening is Mark Penshorn.
Good evening, Mayor Gutierrez. Good evening, council members, Dr. Brown, the rest of the staff. My name is Mark Penshorn. I live at 8320 Trainer Hill Road. And before I get to the matter I was going to talk about tonight, I want to say it was really a pleasure to be part of the audience of watching this survey, which is proof of why I moved my dental practice to Schertz 20 years ago. I'll also say that the highest rating you had on that survey was Schertz Magazine, and I will add my accolades to that as well. It's been a great magazine since its inception, and it's been a huge factor in my dental practice. So now I'll get to the business that I came to talk about. I'm here to address an issue that was on tonight's agenda but got moved to next week. I decided I would come anyhow and give you all a little more time to think about what I'm going to say. There's an item on next week's agenda to amend the comprehensive land use plan to change the zoning of approximately 363 acres north of Trainer Hill Road from estate agricultural to single-family housing. My family owns several hundred acres of farm and ranch land, approximately 1,500 feet from the edge of that proposed development. Yesterday, as it turns out, was the 170th anniversary of the purchase of the majority of that land by my ancestors. I have lived on that land all of my life, and I, in spite of being a dentist, have continued to produce livestock and crops to this day. In March 2001, I moved my dental practice to the building that my wife Kathy and I built at the corner of FM 3009 and Dimrock. As a result of that process, I became acquainted with much of the city staff and most of the elected officials. The following October, then acting city manager Steve Simonson invited Kathy and me to meet with him and city manager Ron Youngblood to discuss what he described as the Southern Schertz issues. They explained how Schertz had managed to acquire from San Antonio the land south of Randolph Air Force Base, bordered by 1604, 1518, and Interstate 10. They went on to then ask if we, Kathy and I, thought our farm and ranch neighbors would be in favor of asking San Antonio to release our area from their ETJ and allow Schertz to assume it. Apparently, San Antonio was unwilling to release the area without approval, or at least some word from the residents that they weren't in opposition to that. After several years of conversations and meetings, we agreed to come alongside Schertz in that effort and gave our signatures. The process worked, and our area became Schertz ETJ. I figured that being in Schertz was a whole lot better than being in San Antonio, for just more reasons than I have time to explain tonight. During that process and the many successive meetings with the city of Schertz since then, we have been repeatedly assured that our agricultural way of life was an asset to the city of Schertz. and that the eventual build-out of our area, which everyone knows is going to happen, would be in a manner that would preserve much of the open spaces, and that those of us who would be neighbors to such build-outs would be included in the planning process as we were in previous planning processes, including the development of the current comprehensive land use plan. In keeping with that, those of us who are still living out and working on the land and will be most affected by the development process are here to say that we would like to be part of the process. I'm asking the council to deny the amendment next week until after the new comprehensive land use plan has been put into effect, and hopefully that will be put into effect with input from those of us who are stakeholders in that area.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Dalla, please call the next speaker.
Next up is Michelle Teraletsky.
Michelle Terletsky, 705 Maryland Drive in Schertz. I don't know if, well, good afternoon, evening, whatever. I don't know if I got this brochure because of the survey that y'all had talking about preparedness in emergencies or not, but I got this brochure and it says, you have received this safety brochure because you have been identified as someone who lives, works, or conducts farming activities near a natural gas, liquid, and/or crude oil pipeline or gathering system operated by Enterprise Products Operating LLC and/or Enterprise Crude Pipeline LLC, collectively referred to in this brochure as Enterprise. Our gathering systems may move natural gas or crude oil to processing plants or to an interconnection with larger mainline transmission pipelines. Now, I'm not going to read all of that. My concern is I know of two ways to transport natural gas. One is when you eat cabbage or Brussels sprouts. The other is when you have a pipeline, okay? Now, in my house, if it's natural, my dogs will spend the better part of the day staying away from me. If I go home and tell them that there's a pipeline in my area, I need to prepare them for that. So my question is, where's the pipeline that they're referring to in this brochure? Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Dalla, please call our next speaker.
Okay, next up will be Kay Vincent.
Good evening, Mayor Gutierrez, City Manager, council members, city staff, and area residents. My name is Kay Penshorn Vincent, and my home is at 8310 Trainer Hill Road, adjacent to my brother's property and part of the contiguous family land. For more than 20 years, I've been very proud of the city of Schertz. Its leadership had a vision for growing and doing city better than any of the other small municipalities in this area. That vision resulted in Schertz receiving very favorable national and regional press, thereby increasing awareness of the community and serving as a beacon to bring economic development here. I am here to voice concern about the city's seeming disregard for continuing to follow its rule book in the proposed amendment to the comprehensive land plan, when the master plan is currently under review by city staff. It seems premature and a rush to judgment, especially based on the survey we just saw when traffic and preparedness for growth were high on the list of issues in the neighborhood. Municipalities have difficulty maintaining cohesion and direction simply because elected officials come and go. Therefore, every elected official has a profound responsibility to every citizen and business to ensure that due diligence is conducted and that actions are made with care and caution in designing the future of a region. Schertz is part of the Texas Triangle, cited as emerging power in the global economy by a groundbreaking new study that examines the intricately linked phenomena of interwoven population growth, economic power, quality education, business leadership, and fiscal significance. That means that Schertz is under the microscope like any other time in its history. You only have one chance to do it right and to do it well. You have an obligation to your forebears, current residents, and business owners, and all the actions you take now will either attract and retain new residents and businesses as a plan for the future. The consequences will have long-term effects. Will the zoning decisions you make next week ensure properties make sure it's an excellent place to live in 10 or 20 years or even 50? As you review the development plan, are Gantt charts used to plan and schedule the proposed projects? Has one been done for the proposed development off of Trainer Hale? I see significant safety issues led by infrastructure inadequacies at this time, not in future, but at this time, flooding and traffic. And I find it striking that this effort is taking place the year before the Texas Water Development Board submits its statewide, broken into specific regions, flood plan to the state legislature, which will significantly impact how all future development in the state is handled. Greed over growth planning. Is the city driving the growth, or are landowners pushing the growth by setting a price point that only works for a specific model of development? Is the city the dog or the tail? We can look all around the region and the state and see many examples of disasters from growth without adequate infrastructure and planning. The growth is coming. We know that. I don't oppose growth. I just want it to be done smartly. I will be here again next week with as many of our neighbors as can attend. Thank you for your time.
Mayor Pro Tem, please call our next speaker.
All right, final speaker this evening is Dana Eldridge.
Dana Eldridge, 2628 Gallant Fox Drive, Schertz, Texas. Happy New Year. Come on, smile a little bit, eh? I didn't want you to think I'd moved out of the city, so I thought I'd come up here and talk. I got a water bill. Everybody gets those, you know. And I'm a little confused. It says sewer averaging for winter months begins on 1 November 2021. We do that all the time, every year, okay? And it goes through March 15th, 2022. Also, new water and sewer rates will take effect November 1, 2021. I'm thinking that more than likely last year's averaging, which happened November through March, took effect this November. Otherwise, you started November 21, 2021 with new rates, but you're not doing the averaging until afterwards. I'm a little confused with the wording on that, okay? Second thing, I had to do some stuff on Main Street today. I couldn't find any parking. It's difficult. I didn't want to park down at the bank and walk all the way back, so I didn't do my business down there. I would appreciate if we could do something with the parking on Main Street. We do still have a few businesses down there that people go to, okay? Live Oak, I only saw 4 little pylons today when I came here, and that was because of a little spot on a sidewalk, nothing on the road. Looked good, looked good. I wanted to give you a thumbs up on that, okay? Thumbs up, thumbs up. And my final thing, congratulations, Grandma.
Mr. Kelm, could you please explain the water rates? I think there was a water rate increase, and this is a sewer averaging, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir, you're right. This is 2 different separate actions that are going on. One is the sewer averaging that we do annually, like Mr. Eldridge said. The second action is the increase in water rates. So there's 2 different events going on.
Yes, that's correct. That's why there were 2 different ones. I hope that explains it. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Consent agenda items are considered self-explanatory, and information packets are provided to council and available for public viewing. These items require no separate discussion unless requested by council. Item number 1, the approval of the minutes of our meeting on December 14, 2021. Item number 2, resolution number 22R 02, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the Eighth Amendment to the interlocal agreement with the Alamo Area Council of Governments to provide funding in the amount of $42,666 for transit services in the City of Schertz. Item number 3, appointment of Mr. Jesse Gonzalez as an alternate member to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mayor Pro Tem Dalla, please continue reading the following.
Item number 4, resolution number 22-R-03, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, accepting the semi-annual reports with respect to the capital improvements plan and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 5, resolution number 22-R-05, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for the purchase of one fire apparatus and associated equipment. Item number 6, resolution number 22-R-09, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving a interlocal agreement amendment between the City of Schertz, Texas and the San Antonio River Authority for sewage transportation, treatment, and disposal in southern Schertz and other matters in connection therewith.
Thank you. Council, do any of these need to be removed for separate consideration? Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 6?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Haywood, second by Mayor Pro Tem Dalla. Council, any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We have 6 ayes, no objections. Motion passes. All right, we'll move on to item number 7, discussion item. Ordinance number 22T03. An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing an adjustment to the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget to provide funding for the purchase of the HVAC equipment for the Civic Center HVAC replacement project, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing an effective date. This is also our first reading. Okay, Mr. McCollum, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Dr. Brown. Scott McClellan, I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works, and tonight have the first of a few times when over the next few months that we'll be coming before you with items for the HVAC replacement of the Civic Center. So back in October, did a little presentation getting approval to do the design of the HVAC replacement. So a couple of the reminders about what was discussed then about the proposed project. So the existing system was installed in 2006 when the building was built. We've been having some issues with that system. It's also come to the end of its useful life. So as opposed to just replacing like for like with the split systems, we are proposing to install a new system entirely. It involves installing some large package units outside the building, reusing a lot of the ductwork, and then using variable air volume boxes to distribute that air as needed. So it's a little different of a design than what's there right now, but should be a better fit. So some of the new information since the last time I presented in October, the design is still on schedule. It's planned to be completed in early February. And we've worked with the Civic Center staff to make the facility available beginning in late March with a planned completion in early June. So we've got about 2 months to complete the project. And so that 2 months is why I'm here tonight. So we've decided to break up the project to try to hit that schedule. It is an aggressive schedule, but we're trying to minimize the downtime of the Civic Center, so that reduces the amount of closure that has. It's bringing in revenue for the city, but then we're also trying to complete the project before the really heavy cooling season. And so in order to do that, we're doing a little bit of a different approach to it. So as I said, back in October, we approved the design, so pretty standard there. But tonight, we're looking to fund the purchase of the HVAC equipment. So that's approximately $250,000. That's what we're asking to be moved from the hot fund reserves into the operating funds, so we can purchase that equipment. So that has to be done two readings with an ordinance. That's why I'm here tonight. And then next week on January 11th, I'll be bringing a contract for us to purchase that equipment through Sullivan Contracting. And what that does for us, as you can see on those dates, so instead of waiting till early February or into March for the contractor to, for the design to be fully complete and the contractor to bid the job fully designed, we've kind of shifted up the picking of equipment, reviewing equipment, getting bids on equipment, and that is ultimately going to save us a couple of months worth of lead time. So we can place the order on the equipment and get those going that have about a 13-week lead time, so that then in the around April timeframe, that equipment will arrive. So again, it's just kind of a scheduling exercise that we're going through. Equipment lead times are longer than they have been in the past due to supply chain, but they're also more volatile. So we'll get, on other projects that we've had been assured we'll have equipment next week. Next week, it'll be Monday of next week, and they'll be like, oh, it's gonna be 3 weeks now, and without any notice. So we're doing the best we can to try to get the equipment ordered as soon as possible in the process, but it is a bit unusual for us to go this route. But we feel confident in the process that we're going through, and the equipment won't change as the design is developed. So again, tonight, just looking to get approval on that first reading of the budget ordinance to transfer those the hot funds, which are funding the whole project, eligible to do the capital improvements at the Civic Center, into the operating account, so that then we can fund the contract that we'll bring next week that's actually awarding the purchase of the equipment. And then once the design is fully completed, and the contractor has a chance to put together the full contract amount, sometime in late February or early March, we'll come back again to you all to fund the rest of the project to the amount needed, and then award that contract and get going in late March. So does anybody have any questions about that?
Hey, thank you, Scott. Council, any questions? Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, Scott, just want to make it perfectly clear that the money is coming from our hotel occupancy tax.
Yes, sir.
Don't skip on the designs. I believe there's let's put it that way. and that money is restricted in so many ways. Hey, let's get the best system we can.
Yep.
For the intended purpose.
Yep.
That's all I have to say.
Mayor Pro Tem Dalla.
Or are you sure that the $250,000 will be enough? Is there also contingency funds included in that?
So there is some contingency over so we're still working with the contractor to finalize. We had some questions about the numbers that they gave us, but yeah, we're confident that the $250,000 will cover the equipment purchase, which is what this is intended to cover. So there's no need to cover project contingency, that sort of thing in this funding. We'll get that in the next one, but yeah, we're confident it'll cover all the equipment.
This is just for the equipment. This is not for construction.
Correct. Yep. This is only for, so it's for, what's included in this is the three package units, the dedicated outdoor air unit, and then those VAV boxes, which I think there's 13 of those. So quite a bit of equipment.
Okay. Council, any other comments, questions? No? Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 22T03?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Scagliola, second by Councilmember Hayward. Council, any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We have 6 ayes, no objection, motion passes. All right. Roll call confirmation. Our City Secretary, Brenda Dennis, will provide a roll call confirmation on consent agenda items 1 through 6 and discussion item number 7. Ms. Dennis?
Yes, consent agenda items 1 through 6. A motion was made by Councilmember Hayward, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dalla. Mayor Pro Tem Dalla, Councilmember Scott, Whitaker, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed 6-0. Item number 7, ordinance number 22T03 on first reading. A motion was made by Councilmember Scagliola, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Dalla, Councilmember Scott, Whitaker, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. All right, we'll move on. We have a closed session. Item number 8, our city council will meet in closed session under section 551.087 of the Texas Governmental Code. Deliberations regarding economic development negotiations, closed meeting. The governmental body is now required to conduct an open meeting, 1, to discuss deliberations regarding commercial or financial information that the governmental body has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the territory of the governmental body, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations, or 2, to deliberate an offer of financial or other incentive to a business project, and this is in reference to project number E-079. The time is now 7:18. We will reconvene after our discussion. time is now 8:05. We reconvene into a regular session after a discussion and deliberation regarding our closed session in reference to item number 8 in regards to Economic Development Project 079. There is no vote required, therefore no vote confirmation is needed. So we'll move on. Additional requests and announcements. Any further announcements from our city manager, Dr. Brown?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Council, any possible updates or information requested from staff?
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Haywood.
As we're getting the emails for separation, I'd like to have the onboard date added to that email, as well as exit interviews.
Okay. Dr. Brown, can you just, if you can just get with Councilmember Haywood and get specifics on that? Okay, it's not requested on the agenda, just additional information. Okay. Any others? All right, Council, any possible items you'd like to place on the future agenda? None, okay. Announcements by our council members. Mayor Pro Tem Dalla.
All I have is attended our first New Year's Eve event there in Pickle Park. I think Parks and Rec did a great job setting it up, given the current state of affairs with COVID, and you know, I thought the turnout was pretty good on that. I don't know what the count was, but probably several hundred people showed up. You know, I think it's definitely something that we need to continue on for a couple more years and see what we can do with it.
Okay. Councilmember Scott.
Yeah, ditto on that one. I thought it was really charming. We didn't get there at the very beginning, but probably 20 or 25 minutes after it started. And man, the band was fantastic. The weather was exquisite. I was having a really good time. And then Councilman Scagliola told me I had my mask on upside down. So I had to be a bird and I was a cat. But it was fun. It was just fantastic. Good job, Parks.
Councilmember Whitaker.
Nothing, sir.
Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, ditto what was said about the masquerade party. It was a lot of fun.
Councilmember Hayward.
Yes, the masquerade, it was a lot of fun. It was well thought out. I was glad that after 2 years of preparation, it actually got to happen. And the weather played along really nicely. We had an awesome band, and all the people that I ended up talking to were pretty much from the city of Schertz and Cibolo. And the folks with kids actually enjoyed it because they had a place that was quiet to bring their kids and just enjoy bringing in the new year. So it was fantastic. I think we can continue it. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Okay. The time is 8:09. We stand adjourned. Councilmember Scott.